Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gigamon Bootcamp, practical advice for inline and out-of-band decryption. Today's webinar is sponsored by Gigamon and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Keith Ward with Actual Tech Media, and I am thrilled to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great content, though, we do have a few housekeeping items you need to know that'll help you get the most out of this session. First up, we want your questions. Just put them in the questions box in your webinar control panel. Our experts today will be taking questions during the event, so make sure to keep those coming. Now, that Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues you might be experiencing. If you can't hear or see something, just give your browser a quick refresh and that'll fix most of your problems. If that doesn't work, well, try it again. Often it takes a couple of refreshes. And if that still doesn't work, let us know and we'll get right on it and try to help you out. Okay, next, you'll find some great handouts in the handouts section of your control panel. Now, that handouts tab is just to the left of the questions tab where so many of you are right now telling us where you're logging in from and saying hello. And we also always appreciate hearing from you that way. So keep that going too. Now, in that handouts section, I especially want to call your attention to 3 handouts from Gigamon. And they include a decryption solution brief, a link to a blog entry about decryption, and a PDF all about deep observability. Now, those handouts are all free, so I would encourage you to go over there now. Click on the links and download those resources. There, you'll also find a link to the ATM Decisions Group, which is a panel of IT decision makers that you can apply to join to participate in some more in-depth events and other opportunities. You're also going to find a link to the ATM Events Center, which has our calendar of more upcoming events just like this one. Now, third, at the end of the event today, we are going to be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one of you listening to my voice right now. Now, you do have to be in attendance during the entire live event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found also in that handout section right down there at the bottom. And with that, folks, why don't we just dive right into today's fantastic content. It is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have got Shru Dineshan, Ram Mohan, and Martin Crew on tap. Martin is going to introduce our guests more fully, so I'm going to let him take over right now. Martin, the floor is yours.
Everybody, thanks for joining for what we hope is going to be a really high-value session on practical advice for both inline and out-of-band decryption. My name's Martin Crew from the products team at Gigamon, and I'm joined by 2 of my great colleagues from the same team, Shru Dineshan, who's a senior product manager, and Ram Mohan, who's one of our technical whizzes. They're both going to be joining in the discussion this morning. So let's just start out with a quick review of the agenda. So after this very brief introduction, Shrudi's going to give us an overview of Gigamon's TLS SSL decryption capabilities. These are capabilities that we're seeing our customers making more and more use of as the volume of encrypted enterprise traffic grows and the threats from that encrypted traffic grow in direct proportion. So I think that's going to be a very interesting session. Then we're going to talk about some of the practical issues that people have in how best to deploy decryption technologies within their existing architectures. Then we're going to follow up with a demo. So Ram's going to take us through some of the issues that we see in the real world with customers deploying decryption. Then after a quick summary, we'll take your questions, and we're really looking forward to those. So if you have questions, please use the chat window, please send them through to us, and we will make sure that they get answered. But with that, I'm done, and I'm going to hand over to Shruti to give you an overview of Gigamon's capabilities in this area.
Thank you, Martin. All right. Before we dive in, did you know that about 80% of organizations don't even decrypt encrypted traffic? You might be wondering why. Because the answer is quite simple. If you know it really, it is quite complex to begin with. Decryption is quite complex and it is not easy, which you all might already be knowing. So let's take a look at what are some of the problems that organizations are facing with this encrypted traffic, why they choose not to properly encrypt in the first place. If you look at some of these stats here, these are quite powerful to say the least. You'll see that about 95% of web traffic is encrypted. Now, this is coming from data directly from Google. And to add to this, as you know, the threat vectors and attack surface all are expanding every day. And malwares nowadays are using more and more for some form of encrypted communications to launch attacks. You can see about 90% of malwares use some sort of encrypted communications to launch attacks now. And as threats are getting more advanced, it has also become important to not just monitor north-south traffic, but also to monitor east-west traffic. And you can see that about 80% of cyber attacks nowadays are exploiting that vulnerability, that lack of visibility into east-west traffic, which is kind of very crucial right now. And if you look at the common thread across these three stats, you can see that lack of visibility is a huge problem, whether it is a lack of visibility into your encrypted traffic directly, or you're having no visibility into what's going on with your east-west traffic. One example is one of the attacks that you know have happened at MGM Grand. The attackers called Black Cat actually launched a series of attacks on MGM using a simple social engineering tactic. They soon got hold of a system and then they moved laterally, exploiting that east-west lack of visibility into their as a blind spots. They were able to take off more than $100 million from MGM Grand. So they had to pay that much amount of money. Now, as you can see, all this lack of visibility is creating a huge problem because there's a significant blind spot that we are missing. And it is time that we actually understand what that blind spot is and we take action. Let's talk a little bit about how Gigamon comes into play here and how Gigamon can help with this challenge. In this slide, we're going to talk about, on a high level, what are some of the TLS challenges. And we're also going to talk about how Gigamon can help address that TLS challenge for you. Now, first, if you are Inline, you have a bunch of tools on your network, ranging from firewalls, you have IPS, WAF, or whatever security tools that you have on your network. The challenge of TLS traffic is that each of these appliances have to decrypt and re-encrypt traffic in a serial fashion. And doing that at each tool becomes explosively expensive because now the tools have to keep up with the increasing demands of trying to decrypt as well as re-encrypt at each of these tools. And this reduces the overall performance of your network. It contributes to latency because each tool has to individually do decrypt and re-encrypt. And also keep in mind that passive TLS 1.3 decryption is not possible because of the nature of how PFS works. So that's a huge problem as well for organizations. Now let's take a look at how Gigamon helps address that TLS challenge for you. At Gigamon, we take this TLS function and centralize it. We decrypt once and feed it to how many tools as possible. Like it could be your inline tools, it could be out-of-band tools. And the beauty of the solution is by decrypting all this centrally, you're overall increasing the efficiency of your network, your effectiveness of your tools, and your coverage. Now let's take a look at some of the key features that you get with Gigamon TLS decryption. We are able to identify what type of TLS, whether it's a TLS traffic or SSL traffic, you can automatically detect on any standard or non-standard TCP ports. So I can tell if a customer is using TLS 1.0 on their network, for instance. You can quickly identify those versions. Decryption offloading for layer 3 tools. We talked about this. This is taking that decryption function from layer 3 tools such as a firewall and then offloading it into our device so that they can do their jobs better. They do not have to decrypt and re-encrypt. Rather, they can focus on the function of protecting their network. Next is decrypting once and feeding many tools. By centralizing decryption, we are able to take that in a centralized fashion, decrypt just once, and feed to as many tools as you want, whether it's inline or out of band. Another cool feature that we have is a decrypt versus no decrypt listing policy. What this means is it gives you complete control of how you want your traffic to flow and what type of content needs to be decrypted or which needs to be non-decrypted. For instance, take this example. You are a healthcare provider or you're a financial service provider. You do not want your customers' credit card information to be decrypted. So you can choose to not decrypt those kind of traffic for PCI compliance. Another one cool feature is that we support all standard and EU ciphers plus HSM products. And the HSM products could have Venafi integration, which could be Tails, Luna. So we support all that ciphers as well as HSM products here. Now let's take a look at the all-new TLS SSL dashboard. So this cool feature was released as part of Gigaview 6.7 just a couple of days back. But this is a very powerful feature because it gives you complete visibility into your encrypted traffic. There are a bunch of dashboards that come under the TLS SSL dashboards, and it also provides you a lot of widgets that provides you very granular information into what is going on with your encrypted traffic. Before, if you were flying blind, if you did not know if it was a black box for you, you configured TLS SSL but did not know what is going on. Now here is the answer. You can troubleshoot, monitor your decryption very easily. You can assess your overall performance, compliance, risk, because you can see what's going on extremely well. And you can go through, top URLs, CPU cycles, memory, TLS versions, and a whole bunch of stuff. These are all available to you in the form of different widgets. And you can see if there is a complete spike in your network. Oh, okay, fine. Your CPU was at 90%. So that explains the errors. Or you can see TLS 1.0 on your network, which is a very weak one. So you need to get rid of that. So you can identify a lot of risks and issues that could potentially cause a huge risk to your organization. You can also easily investigate issues with historical data. It gives you a lot of room to actually get into the bottom of a lot of issues. You can track trends over time. You can generate those as reports, and you can really get granular. So at the end of the day, the TLS dashboards give you the power to see what is going on with your encrypted traffic, which is huge. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ram to talk about some of the deployment scenarios.
Thank you, Shruti. Let's talk about different deployment scenarios. To start with, we have 4 inline decryption models that we are going to talk about today. To begin with, we have a inline decryption model, that is the decryption enabled on the security tool itself. And then followed by it, we have a decryption model where we deploy the decryption on the active standby network, where the tools deployed in the active standby network. And then followed by it, we have a decryption enabled on the active standby network using a dedicated decryption appliance. And then followed by it, we have the decryption enabled on the active network with asymmetric traffic flows. All these 4 decryption models, the deployment scenarios, has certain challenges deploying inline SSL. Now let's see how Gigamon help to address those challenges. To start with, the traditional way of deploying inline SSL. As mentioned by Shruti, about 85% of the traffic is encrypted, and malware uses encrypted channel as a medium to gain threats. Getting visibility into encrypted traffic is no more an option for the customers. In the diagram, you can see a grain padlock symbol, which depicts the SSL inspection enabled on each tools, starting from the perimeter, that is from the next generation firewall, the IPS, and then the WAF. Although it helps enterprise to solve the challenges with the SSL and improving the threat detection, but it also brings certain challenge to the enterprise. Enabling SSL inspection on each tools degrades the performance by 50 to 70%, and it also requires a crypto hardware acceleration to improve the performance. It also introduces the latency, as the traffic must be decrypted, re-encrypted on each tool. Another challenge for the administrators to manage the private keys and certs on each device individually. Now, let's look about a scenario, how Gigamon can help this. Now let's review how the existing architecture has changed with Gigamon. With Gigamon, we have a GigaView HC device deployed between the upstream and downstream device, which helps the enterprise to offload SSL inspection from the security tools, such as the next generation firewalls, IPS, and WAF. This setup provides the security tools with additional CPU cycles to process more traffic, resulting in better threat detection. Additionally, this approach helps customers to improve the latency, as the decryption only occurs once. Additionally, the GigaView FM, a centralized fabric manager, allow enterprise to simplify their deployment policies using a unified flexible canvas and manage private keys and certificates. Furthermore, this product is also compliant with US NSA guidance. Moving to the next scenario, the active standby network. For any enterprise, network uptime and resiliency is no more option for them. Traditional network components such as the next generation firewalls and the switches are deployed in high availability to maintain resiliency. Not only the high availability to maintain resiliency, it is also to have the session synchronization happens between both the firewalls. However, with such traditional decryption deployment, there is always a challenge. If you look into this picture, we have IPS and WAF deployed on both the active and standby paths. With this approach, the security tools which are deployed on the active and the standby path is going to be idle. I mean, the security tools which are in the IPS, which are in the standby path, are going to be idle, as the active path will be always up and running and the standby path will be idle, right? Now, let's look into a scenario how standalone SSL decryptor address this challenge. On the right side diagram, you do see a standalone SSL decryptor being deployed on both the paths. So these two standalone decryptors are on individual devices and again works as an active standby. With this approach, although the standalone decryptor acts as a centralized decryptor product, which also helps customer to offload the SSL inspection, but the tools which are on the standby path or even the SSL decryptor itself becomes dormant because it is just the active standby network and the decryptor itself deployed in active standby way. And other challenge that this kind of deployment imposes is that whenever there is a failover happens from the primary path to secondary path, the session tables won't be transferred from the decryptor which is deployed on the primary path to the secondary path, which brings a business outage whenever there is a failover happens. Now, let's look at how Gigamon can help address these challenges. With Gigamon, we have a Gigamon's resilient inline SSL solution. We will be deploying HC devices on both the active and the standby paths, and it has been connected via the interbroker pathway. So the resilient inline intelligence aggregates all the TLS SSL traffic that comes on the active path, which is on the left side of the HC device, and then it becomes master, and then it sends off of the connections to the HC device, which is in the standby path, for the decryption and send it to the security tools for threat inspection. Once the threat inspection has been done, the traffic is again sent back to the same HC device, which is in the active path, and send it to the upstream or downstream device. This allows customers to efficiently utilize both the SSL engines and the connected security tools by just keeping the network as active standby or not imposing multi challenges on the network or doesn't need to change the network components. Additionally, the session will remain active in the event of a failover with the upstream and downstream device. As a result, this becomes more resilient solution. The final one is going to be the active-active network with asymmetric decryption. As the enterprise network may have redundant paths connected to the internet, you may have a network components such as next generation firewalls deployed in an active-active way, where both the paths, where the traffic is being sent by both the paths. And then the security tools, whatever deployed on both the paths, need to have symmetric traffic flow. Since the security tools is as a stateful engine, it has to have a stateful sessions to process it. With such kind of scenario, if you send asymmetric traffic flows between the security tools, it's going to have the session failure. Now let's see how Gigamon addresses these challenges with the solution. Gigamon's resilient active-active solution. What it exactly does is that it deploys Gigamon devices on both the active-active paths, which helps the enterprise to aggregate all the asymmetric flows, and Gigamon make it symmetric and feed it to the security tools, so that the security tools only sees the symmetric traffic, so that it can process it in a better way without dropping it, which leads to better threat detection. Additionally, whenever there is a failure occurs on any of the path or any of the network components in the active path, the Gigamon's resilience inline solution can still translate or send the sessions to the other active device or other security tool by just maintaining 100% network security. And it also ensures that there is a complete visibility available without any intrusive network changes. Now let's jump into a quick demo to see how Gigamon Inline SSL solution will be exactly deployed on the enterprise. This is Gigamon's centralized fabric manager. The Gigamon centralized fabric manager, which is used to manage the physical nodes as well as the virtual nodes of Gigamon. As you can see here, we can also manage the physical nodes, also the virtual components within a same centralized fabric manager. Now just moving into the inline SSL deployment, we need to get into the orchestrated flows, inline flows. So for today's demonstration, I have a GigaView HC1 Plus device, which is already discovered on the FM. Let me get into the configuration canvas. The default inline 131 is the inline network pair, which I'm going to use it for today's demo. So before we configure or deploying inline SSL, we would like to configure the inline SSL profile, which is also I created predefined. You can see here, we have to define the inline SSL profile, and it's going to be a hybrid deployment, whereas we'll be decrypting both inbound as well as the outbound sessions. And then when it comes to the configurations, you can select which traffic needs to be decrypted. You can also select what is the tool failover action. And then when it comes to security exceptions, you can also select which traffic needs to be decrypted and which traffic needs to be dropped. For example, you can also drop the sessions which has invalid certificate or the expired certificate, and then you can decrypt only the self-signed and unknown CS certificate. As Shruti was mentioning on the previous sessions, flexible inline SSL canvas gives the flexibility, the granularity to configure policies based on the user categories. You can add specific rules to bypass or decrypt some of the traffic based on URL categories. For this demonstration, I have used financial services as an example for not to decrypt. Whatever the sites that comes under financial services, that is basically will be bypassed, right? Now, let me drag and drop the flex map. So here you can select which traffic needs to be decrypted. You can select for this demonstration, I'm using IPv4. And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to bring the GigaSmart engine that is basically does the decryption. So once the traffic is decrypted, that decrypted traffic would be sent to the series of security tools. For this demonstration, it's going to be the IPS, and then it's going to be the WAF. You can also add multiple tools in the series. Additionally, what we are going to do is that we are also going to copy. We are going to take the copies of the traffic. Let me add an OOB copy. You need to select the tool port, example NDR or IDS. One of the beauty of Gigamon is that you can get the copies of the traffic for both encrypted as well as the decrypted flows. Whatever the traffic that I'm collecting it from the GigaSmart engine, it is basically the decrypted traffic. You can also collect the encrypted traffic for the same flows. So for this demonstration, I'm going to collect both the encrypted as well as the decrypted traffic flows and sending it to a NDR. So that's it from the configuration perspective. Let's quickly go ahead and deploy this. That's it. Deployment is done. Now let's go to the client system. This is the client system. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to access salesforce.com. And then if I check the certificate information, right, as you can see here, right, the certificate has been re-signed by Gigamon. So Gigamon being the primary MITM, we have to install the re-signing certificate on all the clients, and then the Gigamon will provide the re-signing certificate to the client. Now, another example that what I'm going to show you is that the Bank of America, as I mentioned on the demo, we are just bypassing the financial sites. So Bank of America Corporation comes under the financial sites as it is getting bypassed. We can also take a look into another site, which is an internal site, that is the docs portal, that is the internal site hosted internally on the network. Since we've been decrypted all these three sites, right? Now let's take a look on the FM how this information looks like. Let me go to the dashboards. On the Fabric Health Analytics dashboard, you can see the inline SSL dashboards. So it gives you like 5 tabs. To begin with, if I select session overall, it tells you how many number of sessions been intercepted by Gigamon and what is the average decryption rate. And then you can also see the session engine overview, how many number of GigaSmart engines which has been used and then used for the decryption. And then moving into the session insights, you can see like what is the traffic status, how much of the traffic is decrypted, what are the traffic is said to be decrypted by outbound and what has been decrypted by inbound. And these are some of the top URLs which has been accessed on the network. And these are some of the top URL categories. And this is the TLS version information. You can see here like the TLS traffic for 1.3 and 1.2. And then what are the certificates being used? Like, how many number of expired sets, how many number of unknown CS, right? Couple of key things that I would like to highlight here is that, let me increase the timeline. So now example, if you want to know what are the sessions being bypassed under the policies, right? What are the sessions just been bypassed? So what you can do is that you can actually go here and then select the bypass policies. And you can see here, these are the sessions being bypassed by the policies. Bank of America is one site that we try to access and it's getting bypassed because it falls under financial category. The other information which I would like to share on this demonstration is that visibility into TLS 1.3 traffic. As the nature of the TLS 1.3 is that except the client hello, except the SNI information on the cipher suits, the rest of the informations are encrypted by nature. Gigamon being a SSL decryptor product, we do have an ability to decrypt the encrypted information on the SSL handshake. So which can give you the certificate information despite it has been decrypted over the wire. Since Gigamon is an SSL decryptor product, it can has an ability to decrypt the connections. Now, let me show you an example. Let me click TLS v1.3. You can see here, right? These are the cipher suits that's been used on the under the TLS 1.3. And these are the the session that comes under TLS 1.3, and then all the sessions, 99.3% of the sessions belongs to outbound, and just like 0.07% belongs to inbound. Right. We also provide an in detail logs information for better troubleshooting. Example, if you want to know or if you want to understand what happens to a session, which is decrypted or which doesn't decrypted, right? You can just go here. You can filter the traffic with the source or the destination IP, and then if you expand this information, will give you the clear information of what is the source, destination, and what happened to the traffic. Right. So that's it for the demo.
Ram, that was great. I mean, we've taken a very, very complex issue, which is how to decrypt. We've reviewed a number of different deployment models, and we've shown how the dashboard gives people this high-level vision down into what's exactly happening with decryption on the network. So
yeah,
that was very powerful. So while you were talking, we've had a number of questions come through. I've actually summarized them into sort of 3 main areas. So let me just start out with something that we hear a lot from our customers, which is that they've got tools on the network. In this case, the person's referring to an NDR tool. And the NDR tool, the NDR vendor, I beg your pardon, is saying that you don't really need a TLS SSL visibility solution because they can already detect threats in the encrypted traffic streams. So what's your response to that question?
That is a great question, Martin. So encrypted traffic analysis used by the NDR can identify the threats to a certain extent, but full compression of the threats requires decryption. So decryption is a must, and NDR products can use encrypted traffic analysis to identify threats to some extent, but for full decryption, we need decryption.
Yeah, and I think it's worth adding that many of the NDR vendors like Vectra and ExtraHop, they really benefit from using Gigamon, and they actually acknowledge that themselves. I mean, both for decryption and also for access to all the traffic, hybrid traffic on the network, particularly cloud traffic. So if you are using an NDR, I do think it's worth taking a look at what Gigamon can do to really help get the most out of the spend you've got with that NDR system. So the second question we've got is about perfect forward secrecy. And I know this is a big issue. Many of our customers are looking more and more at how they use PFS. So what changes are required to enable out-of-band decryption for applications that use perfect forward secrecy?
That's one more great question. So the challenge with perfect forward secrecy is that you have to be inline since the nature of the PFS ciphers. So with Gigamon Inline SSL solution, you can deploy Inline SSL inline, and then you can take an out-of-band copies, just an out-of-band copies of the decrypted traffic for the application, which uses perfect forward secrecy. And then there is no need for the passive SSL.
Right, and you showed us that when you built the flow map.
Exactly.
That it's
Yes.
very, very easy to create both inline and out-of-band traffic copies. So really, whichever way your tools need to take, we can get you where you need to be. So it's very powerful, I think. So we got time for one more question, and it's a classic. One of the things we always hear from people, whether it's in sessions like this or in customer meetings, is organizations really don't like deploying more and more agents.
Yeah.
So the question is whether Gigamon requires endpoints to have agents to be able to use this decryption capability.
Okay, so Gigamon is completely transparent, and it doesn't require any agent to be deployed on the endpoints. Also, it doesn't require any proxy configurations that typically people use to configure for the explicit proxies. It is pretty transparent, and there is no proxy configuration required or any configuration required on the client end.
Yeah, and this is a critical thing. I mean, making it as easy and as transparent as possible is a sort of big part of Gigamon's design ethos. And I think with the SSL decryption capability, we've really carried that through and done a good job of it. So Ram, that was a great run through on those questions. Why don't you take a couple of minutes and just run through the key takeaways from today's presentation?
Thank you, Martin. So some of the key takeaways that we're going to talk about from the TLS SSL decryption. Decryption, by the name itself, it becomes complex, but with Gigamon SSL decryption, we can keep it simple. And then we have came across the multiple decryption scenarios, which becomes network complex. And then we talk about how Gigamon help in addressing all these challenges by having a centralized decryption and making it resilient. If you need any assistance or if you're looking for a demo, request a demo or contact our salespersons. We do also have our Gigamon 2, which is available. You can also go through your website and take a look into the Gigamon 2 for inline SSL. Thank you everyone for participating.
Thank you, Ram, and thank you to Shruti and to Martin for a fantastic presentation. Boy, we always learn so much with Gigamon presentations, and today was no exception. Now, I've thrown up the poll question here for you. Please let us know what additional information you would like about the Gigamon solution. I would imagine that after the presentation today, a lot of you are interested in learning more, so let us know in this poll. Also, don't forget about the 3 handouts we have from Gigamon while we start wrapping up today's event. Now, I wanted to mention that any questions that were not answered that you asked today, Gigamon will be following up on and getting back to you with that. So have no fear if you did ask something and it did not make the event. So with that, why don't I give away a $250 Amazon gift card? As I said at the top, you do have to be present for the entire event to be eligible. And we do have a winner for today. And that winner is Damon Salazar from Kansas. Congratulations, Damon. We will be in touch ASAP to get you your Amazon card, so you will be hearing from us. And with that, folks, we are wrapped now. On behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Ram, Martin, and Shruti for making this event possible, along with Gigamon. I want to thank all of you attendees for being here, for your interest in the topic, and your great questions today. And I can't wait to see you in the next event. That's it for me today, folks. Have a great rest of your day.